I'm Mike Costello, and I'd like to talk to you for the next few minutes about the ions of life. In today's world, we have the wonderful technological advances that we have, and so many people have purchased the ion machines that have an impact upon the air that we breathe and the environment in which we live. Ions are defined in one sense as charged atoms with the ability to attract and attach themselves. And what we need in life is ions, not only from a physical standpoint, but from a spiritual and mental standpoint. If we have ions, we have particles, we have bits of ourselves, bits of life that are able to attract and attach to other bits of life and that create the substance that holds life together. In thinking about this concept of ions and the ions of life, we've come up with a variety of words that help us with the idea of taking ions, taking charged atoms, taking small particles of thought that we have within our minds, and being able to create within our mind the dynamic of having these ions or these experiences attract and attach themselves to other experiences, and then create a larger and larger part and parcel of life that's able to outpicture and create the environment in which we live. We believe that we live in our minds and not only in the world, but that every experience that we have is determined by the way that we think about it. And so to embark upon this trip through the ions of our lives, we've looked for certain words that have contained even the word ion, and that's the last of each of these words that say I-O-N. And so many things in our lives, so many experiences, and so many uplifting ideas end in this word ion. The first I'd like to talk to you about is imagination. Imagination is the spark of creativity that resides within each and every one of us. And if we have imagination, if we begin with a little particle of imagination, one ion of imagination, we have within us the seed for something great and wonderful in our being. From the step of imagination, we can look at the next ion, which is visualization. As we're able to visualize things, we see them in our mind. And as we see them in our mind, we're able to begin to give them form and substance. Everything that exists in life came from mind. And if we believe in this creation story, as it's chronicled for us in the book of Genesis, we know that the existence of life itself, this world and all of us, came out of the mind of God, because the mind of God thought of us, and then we were created. Everything that you see in your physical life was thought before it was created. Everything, the television that you're watching right now, was an idea in someone's mind before it was created, before it was invented. And once it was invented, it was through the creation of mind that the idea was put on paper to design the parts and the pieces that are put together to make a television. That's true of the building in which you stand. It's true of the camera to which I'm speaking. It's true of everything in our lives. The bit of imagination, the spark of visualization, was the creative force that made and allowed everything that we know to come into being. The next ion we'd like to share with you is meditation. And that is that dreamlike state, different from prayer, in that we meditate, we go into periods of meditation by going into an unconscious state where we detach ourselves from the physical world and we attach ourselves to the infinite intelligence of Almighty God and the divine spirit of illumination and knowledge. And that process of meditation allows for us to have the imagination and the visualization of our lives connected to the divine presence and power of God. Another stepping stone in the ions of life is the one of affirmation. And to those of us in New Thought, this is a fundamental part of our religion and our philosophical understanding and teaching of life. An affirmation is a statement, that is a spoken word, a spoken statement that is positive and supportive of that which is true in the universe. A good affirmation is, I am a child of God. I am whole. I am healthy. Affirmations are the spoken words that come from our minds. And so if we begin with imagination and we move to visualization, and we bring our imagination and visualization into meditation, then out of that experience comes affirmation, the ability to affirm or say with conviction and knowledge those things that are already and really true in the life experience. A simple little word in the ion of life is the word action. We're all called to action because we can have the most noble ideas and thoughts, the greatest imagination in life. We can have a tremendous meditation or spiritual life. We can affirm the truth of life. But if we're not able to bring it into action, if we're not able to create and move from the point of idea into the reality of what we see, what we feel, and we experience, then we never really move from where we are. The next ion of life is determination. And that is that stick-to-itiveness, the desire that we can have and build within ourselves to be determined to overcome the circumstances and situations that are negative, or the determination to hold on to the positive and uplifting experiences of life. The next is the process of materialization, which is the process of taking our thoughts and turning them from thought into substance. When something materializes, it comes from nothingness. It comes from an absent or an empty place into a place where there is something standing before us. In our lives, what we're challenged to do is to create the materialization of life experience and of daily living that we choose and that we claim in a positive and uplifting way. The next ion of life is realization. That is taking our mind and its structure from the process of thinking, when we have a thought or an imagination, a spark of imagination, taking it into the substance of life, and from the substance of life, taking it to pure and real understanding. When we realize something, we go beyond knowing it, and it becomes an integral part of our process of life and a process of our mind. The last is a very simple statement, but something that we fail to do in so many ways. And the last ion of life is the incorporation. If we incorporate our imagination, our visualization, our meditation, our action, our determination, and realization into our lives, we take all of the ingredients, all of the sparks of life, the ions of life, and we incorporate them into one whole. We become one with the presence and power of God. God is one with us. Knowledge and intelligence are universal, and we have access to all of these things. A way that we understand incorporation today is the concept of the mind, body, and soul, or spirit, that threefold being wrapped into one whole living substance of life. In today's environment, we talk a lot about mind, body, spirit healing. The connection of mind, body, and spirit is the incorporation of all of these things, of all of our parts of being, with all that is. And if we align ourselves perfectly and rightly with these powers, we're able to have the incorporation and the understanding of who and what we are as children of God. In our life, in your life, and in my life, we're challenged over and over again to claim the ions, to claim the sparks of all of these issues, and to allow each one of them to grow into fruition in our hearts and our minds. Everything takes place in our mind. We live in our mind and not in the world. And by embracing the concept and the ideas of the ions of universal life and law, we can change the quality and the way that we live by changing the way that we think. We'd like to pause at this point in the program for a moment of prayer, meditation. We believe in prayer as a centering force, and we invite you to join with us in this reflection. Eternal and loving God, we gather our hearts and minds together in your presence of the many gifts that come to us in our daily lives. And as we claim all of the ions of life, and we charge them with power to attract and attach to other items and issues of life, we know that your divine presence is joining with us in a very positive and uplifting way in this experience that we call life. We know this in the name of faith, in the name of hope, in the name of love. Amen.
Wonderful concept, the ions of life.
Yes, the ions, today we have so many people who buy those little machines
Yes,
to change their physical environment of their
yes,
room or their house or their car. But what we really need to do, that's helpful
yes,
certainly, and it's dealing with the physical aspect, but we need to change the way that we think and to change the whole life.
yes. And there are certain simple rules that we can follow that help us gain the ions of life into our body, into our physical structure, and open ourselves more to the spiritual aspect of being. And one simple thing is just deep breathing. It's interesting how we can change our entire physical outlook just by deep breathing.
Mhm. And as we breathe in, really, we're breathing in power and strength. And as we breathe out, we're breathing out that which we need to release. And so, from a physical sense, and so often, as you have put it so well, we don't think even about breathing. And
Yes,
we don't do, I know many people who do aerobics or play golf or run or jog or do any number of things, but breathing is a very simple issue of life that's able to bring us into a refreshed state.
yes. And you mentioned meditation. That's one of, as I've been teaching meditation now for close to 30 years, I teach first of all to regulate the breathing, and I have them breathe in to the count of 8. Inhale deeply through the nostrils to the count of 8, and hold it to the count of 4, and exhale to the count of 8. With their lips slightly puckered, and then hold that to the count of 8 and inhale through the nostrils to the count of 8. And that there's no magic. I always say there's no magic in the numbers. The magic is in the regularity.
Mhm.
As we regulate our breathing, and that happens too in the past life therapy work that I do. That's how I start those sessions every time, that they will regulate their breathing in that way, then become more relaxed and be able to go right into their experience. And that's true in meditation, certainly, and we can see the results right away.
Mhm, mhm. And it changes the
Right.
person. Mhm.
You know what happens? They're bringing through the prana, God's own energy, and the oxygen, and also the magnetic earth energy. And those combined bring through the ions of life
Mhm.
in a very viable way.
Yeah, they bring in the real ions, the
That's right.
physical ions, but they bring in maybe the truer or the more important ions, the spiritual presence and power, and it allows it to come. I, like you, in working with meditation, one of the things that I do in group meditations when I lead them is begin the process of breathing, and
Hmm.
I usually say the conscious word of holy breath, so
Yes.
that everyone is breathing in holy breath and breathing out all of their negativity and the breathing becomes rhythmic, just as you said, and is important that people be conscious and aware of that until they reach the point of breathing in holiness and breathing out holiness. And that process of thinking in terms of our being connected with the holy and divine, and that it comes in through our breath and it comes into us always.
Creates a wonderful archetype for each person who's in your group. And that's so important. The archetype that we build is what we go from or out to.
Mhm. Yes. That ability to get into a meditative state, I think, is so important. And so many people will say in the process of developing meditation or beginning to meditate that they have such difficulty, while others may be able to embrace it much more
Hmm.
easily. But part of the difficulty, I think, is the detachment from the physical and
That's right.
wanting to do something. We want to always be active participants. We want always to be in control.
Yes.
And we want always to be causing what is to happen. But so often, if we get out of the way, there's the blessing.
Just to learn to be. I remember writing a poem once. I wish that I'd been more calm, that I'd learned to simply be instead of so much being. And that's true. We have to learn to just be. And that's what prayer, meditation, and contemplation does. In prayer, we speak to God, and then in meditation, we listen to God. And in contemplation, we're at one with divinity.
Mhm.
And you can call it anything we like. Some people still call contemplation meditation, which is okay. It doesn't matter what we call it. But the point is, it's a wonderful help to be able to go into that modality of contemplation where we're simply at one with the universe.
And unfortunately, many people, especially in the Western tradition, are only accustomed to prayer.
Yes,
And even silent meditation is unknown to many, many people.
yes. But it's so helpful and it's so wonderful. It's so balancing. And we can get answers to any question we need to ask in our meditation, and the answer will come.
Yeah, the real key in life, I think, is to get at one with God,
Yeah.
at one with the presence. And when that presence connects with us, then wonderful, wonderful things begin to happen.
Yes, but we have to let self, the little self, get out of the way and then function from our higher self. And that's easier said than done, and yet it's very simple. And when people once get the hang of it, they just wonder why they didn't ever learn that sooner.
Mm-hmm. The last ion that we talked about was incorporation,
Yes.
or that connectiveness of all the physical and the spiritual, and bringing it all together. And that is very important in the process of enjoying and learning and growing from life,
Mm-hmm.
to incorporate ourselves.
And if we can do that, then we're at one.
Mm-hmm.
And that's such a wonderful space to be in. There are so many ways we can attune ourselves to God, and we sell ourselves short by just thinking that one way is the only way.
Mm-hmm. Many, many ways to get in touch with the presence of God. And of course, the place where we all need to be and want to be is to be in the presence of God and connected to God at all times.
Yes. Well, that's the ideal, and many people are. Many people go through life, or at least after a time they come into that modality of being, that they're able to be at one with the universe. And if we don't, we're not fulfilling our destiny that we came here to accomplish.
Mm-hmm.
Healing is an interesting aspect of the ions of life, because we gain extra of the healer is actually a channel of God's own healing energy, and then they bring that energy through, and it helps others. And it's interesting to me how it helps some people and not others, a spiritual healing.
Yeah, I believe healing so often, like dealing with poverty and so many other issues that we think are accomplished through the outer workings or activity of life, are totally and completely different than what we see them to be on the surface. I think healing, to begin with, we're all whole and healthy.
Yeah.
It happens that our physical bodies become ill. It's true that our minds become ill, and it's true sometimes that we become spiritually ill. But those illnesses are simply masking the truth of who and what we are. And so the healing, to get back to that comment, the healing comes really not for the one being healed.
Yeah.
It comes as a demonstration of the power of God. It may be for the one that's being healed, but
Yeah.
it comes also as a demonstration for others. And one of the very fundamentalist healers, Catherine Kuhlman, who's light years from our theological understanding, but she was a healer in her ministry. And she said something that I hear very few people saying who are involved in healing, either in the conventional churches or in New Thought churches. But what she said was, I don't know why people are healed. I don't know why. I don't understand it.
Mm-hmm.
And it is simply the power of God. And the healing may not be anything that we can see. You know,
Yes.
so often we see a cancer, we want to see the cancer
Yes.
healed. If we have an arthritis, we want the arthritis healed. But the healing is in many cases so much deeper, and it happens within the person. And there isn't a choice by God. There isn't a stronger or lesser faith. There isn't a better healer or a worse healer. It isn't any of these externals. The healing process is constantly going on within all of us.
Yes, and of course there's healing in mind, in body, in spirit. And very often our physical body simply gets out of kilter. I know last week I did some extra work because of a party at my home and did some heavy lifting. And I had to lift something and then shift it to get something from underneath it. And it affected my lower back. And I tried to get an appointment with my doctor and wasn't able to see that doctor, but my back was not comfortable. And I was talking with a friend on the telephone who I think is able to bring through healing power of God. And I asked her to send me healing energy, and I said I accept it. So the next day she called and she said, "How is your back?" And I said, "How is what?" And she said, "How soon we forget." And I said, "Well, actually, I've not had any pain in my back today." And she said, "Well, it worked." And I was somewhat embarrassed. I was glad she couldn't see my face, because I was embarrassed that I took it so lightly, and that I didn't remember to say thank you the moment she called. because I had had a healing in my back. I didn't need to see a doctor anymore because my back was healed.
And the other aspect of that is to claim the healing whether we see it or not.
That's right.
To see the healing accomplished and know it's accomplished, even though the disease or the pain may continue, it is to see beyond it.
Yes, to know that that's true. That's like I sat with a friend, a neighbor and friend one night last week. So his wife could get out of the house for a time. This gentleman had a stroke, and he's paralyzed from his neck down, and it's quite disconcerting for the family. But he looks comfortable and at peace. And when I looked at him, I thought of what you so often say, that we don't know what's happening on the inner for people whose minds seem to be out of it, because a lot is going on the inner. And obviously, you're so right on target there with this, because this man showed that his face looked like absolute bliss and peacefulness, and yet he didn't respond to healing because he's paralyzed, and he's still paralyzed. In fact, he had another stroke now, and he's in even worse physical condition. But that man proved the power of what you teach so beautifully, that he is in a space where he needs to be right now, doing the work on the inner that he needs to do. And I said to him, if you hear me, blink 2 times, and he blinked 2 times. And then he smiled, and yet he wasn't able to speak.
And whether there's a manifestation of physical healing is really not the issue.
Exactly.
And we become so preoccupied with that. You, in your life and ministry, have undoubtedly come across, as I have, so many cases where people who are wonderful truth students, who have a deep and real understanding of our faith tradition, will be faced with a physical difficulty or the physical difficulty of a loved one. And their feeling is, why did this happen to me? How can this happen to me? As though we're protected and insulated because of our faith, and that's not the point at all.
Well,
and it isn't to insulate us, it is to strengthen us and empower us. And whether the healing takes place in a physical sense or not is not the issue. What happens inside the person, and every one of us need to have what we have. And so often I've said, you've heard me say before, I don't care how faithful and how good and how healthy you are all of your life, one day you're going to die.
Yes.
And that is a necessity. But it is not to be preoccupied with the illness, to be not preoccupied with, and to give strength to that non-reality, but to move on and to move within it.
Confidently. I love the title you chose for this show, Confident Living, because that's the key. Living confidently each moment, each day.
Yeah. And to live confidently regardless of what happens in life.
Yes.
So often in our prayer and meditation, in prayer especially, people want to change circumstances, or they want to change someone or something, when in truth what needs to be changed is us.
Yes.
If we change, and there's that wonderful prayer group on a national level, many prayer groups, which are the Change Me Lord prayer groups, where people come together not to change circumstance or situation, but to change the way that we feel about it.
Yes, I heard a woman say once, someone said, I hope your husband and children are acting nicer toward you. And she said, well, they haven't changed, but I have. And she had. And she looked so happy and victorious. And that's another key, victorious living. If we live confidently, then we are living victoriously.
And because of that confident living and our confident attitude, we can be victorious in every circumstance, even the most devastating.
Yes, and if we're realistic, we realize, as you said earlier, that we have to live through certain circumstances in life, and we don't know unless we look very deeply into other lives why we have the karma that we do. But we all have things to face in every lifetime, and it's how we face. It's not what we have to face, but how we face it.
And so often people want to go into the past, and they want to analyze and look at the root cause and look at why this has come to be. But a very easy shortcut to that whole process is to say, this is the place that I'm in, this is where I am, and so now, Lord, guide me and direct me in what I'm to do. And then we don't have to look back.
Exactly.
We don't have to relive it. And we're able to just move forward with our lives.
Accepting just that the past is past, and living now is the important part, and facing the future with confidence and courage, but not with dread nor fear. But just knowing that the space we're in now is wonderful, and so it's going to be equally wonderful there, because whatever we have to face is we're going to be able to do victoriously.
And the healing is, going back to that issue, is very difficult for many, many people, because they believe that if they don't see a manifestation, if they don't see the change that they want to see, that something is wrong.
There's a failure. But there are no failures except the failure to think positively and to accept. And that's the important thing, that to accept whatever is, and go on with life with confidence and courage and faith. And it's the faith that's so important.
And as we go on, sometimes we need to go on with the illness that we have.
Yes.
Sometimes the illness that comes to our lives or to other people's lives come to bring us a lesson that we would learn in no other way. And we know from those who understand spiritual reality and truth, and many of the messages that we get from the other side, that those who live in handicapped environments, those who are troubled with birth defects, those who live in the most difficult of life challenges, learn so much more from a spiritual standpoint for the experience.
Yes, I just read a little booklet that I think you've read, where Beulah Williams, who happens to be the mother of Esther Williams, the movie star, and Ernest Holmes each brought through information from the inner planes on what they're experiencing at the time the book was written in the mid-70s. And Beulah Williams said she wanted to thank the lady who took care of her physical body while she was still here on Earth, but she was going through so much that she needed to go through. And again, that confirms what you teach so beautifully, that whatever their physical body is experiencing, on the inner, they're doing tremendous and wonderful and glorious work. Just keep the physical body comfortable.
Right.
And this is what she said, that she was so grateful to that lady for keeping her physical body comfortable, because she didn't think that she could have had her children do it and have relaxed and allowed them to, because her modesty and pride would have kept her from it. But because this lady was was earning her living that way, then she was comfortable letting her take care of her body.
She was able to accept the reality of that experience. And Reverend Freelander and I have been talking with you, sharing ideas for confident living, and we look forward to seeing you next time.